Welcome to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College in Middletown. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO, and joining me today on Middlesex Moments is student Josh Greenberg. Thanks for joining me today, Josh.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And actually, I called you a student, but I actually should call you an alumnus because you graduated from the college last year, actually.
I did.
Right?
I am still a college student, but I'm at UConn now.
Okay. Well, what first brought you to Middlesex?
I'm the classic person who uses community college as his comeback story. I went to Northeastern University right out of high school, and I flunked right out. I was being in Boston as an 18-year-old who wasn't sure what he wanted to do is not a recipe for success. So then I ended up I worked for a year, got some work experience under my belt, and really figured out what it was I wanted to do. And then I decided to move out here where my mom and stepdad lived. I wanted to be with them, and Middlesex was the local community college out in Middletown, and so I enrolled there.
Oh, awesome. And you actually enrolled in some of our more difficult mathematics courses, so you definitely have a strong interest in math.
Yeah, I did. The first math course I took at MXCC was differential equations, which is
Whoa.
normally the last math course that people take at MXCC.
And what sparked that interest in mathematics to you? I mean, I talk to a lot of students, and the first thing they'll say is, "Oh, math isn't my thing." But
So like in high school, I was always like good at math. I didn't really realize it was something that you could actually study. You know, I've never been bad at it. I've always been pretty good at it. But then, you know, I was in college. I was at Northeastern, and I originally enrolled as a chemistry major. But I found I really didn't enjoy being in the lab. I liked the chemistry class. I didn't enjoy the chemistry lab. And what I really enjoyed was the math. And on top of that, I remember watching one of my favorite YouTube channels, Numberphile. I'm sure at least some of our listeners will have heard of that. And they were doing a video on this rather advanced math topic called the Riemann it's called the Riemann Hypothesis, and it's about this crazy thing called the Riemann zeta function. I remember just watching the video and thinking to myself, like, if this is like the most advanced math problem that's trying to be solved right now, and I can at least understand what this video is saying, like how it's breaking it down for people who aren't as math educated, and I was enjoying listening to the video, maybe I should give this a shot.
Sure.
Because maybe I have a knack for this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what happened. And I really haven't looked back.
That's pretty cool. And you're majoring in mathematics at UConn and
Yeah.
physics as well, too, right?
Yeah, math major, physics minor.
Okay. Now, during your time at Middlesex, I think this sparked such an interest in you, and it came so natural to you that you were helping out as a tutor in our tutoring center as well.
Yes, I was. Yeah. So the tutoring, I originally enrolled as a tutor my second semester at Middlesex, and I started out as just volunteering, just trying to get some experience, and then the person in charge of the tutoring center, she was finally able to find something within the student labor budget. So I was finally able to get on the payroll, and it just, I would still put in volunteer time even on the payroll. I just enjoyed it so much, and it was my place of study. It was my place to do work. It was my place where I hung out with my friends. It was just a wonderful experience.
So maybe, Josh, you could tell our listeners a little bit about where you grew up, where you came from, and I know you talked a little bit about what got you down to the Middletown area.
Yeah, well, so I've lived in Connecticut my whole life. I've lived in a bunch of different parts of Connecticut, first in Bridgeport, then in Branford, then in New Haven. Then when my parents divorced, I sort of split my time between Stamford, Connecticut and Moodus, Connecticut, where my mom and stepdad live in Moodus, and my dad and stepmom live in Stamford. So I've been all over the state. And now, of course, I spent the last few years in Middletown at Middlesex, and now I'm up at Storrs in UConn.
Now, how have things been going at Storrs, especially this year when the colleges all had to shut down because of this COVID thing?
Yeah, it was definitely a crazy experience. It was but like before spring break, everything was normal. I was settling into my schedule, enjoying the cold weather, and really trying to keep up with my difficult classes that semester. And then all of a sudden after spring break, everything was online, and it was definitely a huge adjustment. But I've been really enjoying my time up at UConn. It's been really wonderful. I was was definitely nervous about the transition, going from community college to UConn, which is, one of the top state schools in the country. But I have settled in very well there, and I have excelled there, and I'm proud of my work
That's
being
great.
there.
That's awesome. And how did you find the transition, also going from a somewhat smaller institution like Middlesex to UConn, which is a pretty big place?
I would say that I was nervous at first, but I was less nervous than I expected myself to be. But I think that's just because I'm a little bit older than the typical undergrad student. I'm 24 right now, and so that I would say if I were a little younger, I would have been a lot more nervous than I was, But I know my purpose at UConn. I know what drives me to be there, and so it wasn't nearly as intimidating of a switch as I thought it would be.
Okay, that's good. Now, were you living on campus, or were you commuting from home?
No, I commute from home. It's a long commute. It's 45 minutes, but at the same time, I didn't save all the money at community college to then go and blow it on dorms and meal plans at UConn.
That's a very smart move then. And I think when you talked earlier too about coming to Middlesex Community College and kind of just kind of as a restart for you, what kind of advice might you give to another student? Maybe it could be a family friend or maybe a student that you run into at the college who might say, "Yeah, I really didn't do too well, and I want to get back on track." What kind of advice might you give to a student like that?
Well, the advice that I would give is that there are plenty of people at community college who are in your similar situation, and it really is a place for you to do that. And it's a place for you to figure out who you are, right? A lot of people go to college to discover what it is they want to study. And I think community college is one of the best places to do that because you're not subjecting yourself to the insane costs of a typical 4-year university. So it's a really, really excellent place to discover what the heck it is you want to do.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things you discovered when you were at Middlesex, and I know you didn't jump in your first semester, but you were a member of the college's honors program. Talk a little about your experience as an honors student at Middlesex Community College.
Well, I was elated to be invited to the honors program. I knew it would entail some extra work, but I felt like it was a validation of the work that I'd put in, turning myself around from somebody who had flunked out of college to, being a straight A student at Middlesex. So I felt I was very elated when I talked to Dr. Jones and Dr. Levy about being recruited into the program. It was really, really encouraging to see. And as an actual honors student, I mean, it was cool participating in community events on campus and whatnot. And I felt a part of a group of other students who really were like me. And I met some very good friends within the honors program as well.
And were there some other perks of being in the honors program that you felt make that kind of stand out as something that Middlesex offers to its students?
I would say the honors program only classes were really good. I was only because of my shortened time in the honors program, I was only in one of them. I took Dr. Trier's honors U.S. history class, which was really, really wonderful. And just everybody else being in the honors program, you could tell that the level was moved from here up to here. So that was a really, really good experience.
Mm-hmm. Now, part of the honors program is that we ask our students to do a capstone project as part of their final semester in that program. Did you do a capstone project, and what was the topic?
Yes, I did. Yeah, so my capstone project was about modern teaching methods, sort of specifically within the context of a college-level calculus class, because calculus is by far my favorite math subject to teach. And so I looked at, I had a lot of success learning math from a repertoire of YouTube channels. And so I thought, why don't we just integrate this into the classroom, right? So it's sort of I did a lot of research within the flipped classroom experience, as well as taking a more active learning approach within the classroom, and not just the professor is up there lecturing and the students are quietly, passively taking notes.
Yeah, I think I do remember you making that presentation at the Convivium, we call it, which we usually do it every April as part of the honors program, but also as a feature of the college. And so I'm just curious then, you have this natural fluency with mathematics, and so a lot of this I think would come easy to you. Were you seeing things among your fellow students that made that kind of spark in your head to say, hey, there's different ways that this subject could be taught so everybody can enjoy math? Is that kind of what prompted that?
I don't know, honestly, because I based it more on my personal experience, right? Finding certain math classes, not really at Middlesex, but in my experience prior to Middlesex, difficult. And whereas once I found a lot of the YouTube channels that I still watch to this day, it just I was doing math in my spare time, right? Like it, it really sparked my interest for the subject, and I felt like that's what was missing from a lot of my academic experience, especially in high school and the first time I went to college.
Interesting. So now you're at UConn, majoring in math and physics. I guess two-part question is, how well do you think Middlesex prepared you for the academic experience? You talked a little bit about it before, but...
Yeah, so Middlesex did a very good job at, as I was talking about before, allowing me to discover who I was, right? So my experience was not the one where I became a good student because I was rigorously drilled to be a good student. I became a good student because I had professors who clearly wanted me to be a good student and gave me the tools and the, I would say, slightly less hands-on approach, and just allowed me to flourish on my own. Right? I think that is a strength that has sort of resonated throughout my experiences in different classes.
Yeah, you don't want to be spoon-fed this material. You want to be, respected for your interest and your own ability to learn it, together with your instructor, it sounds like. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the instructors who speaks very highly of you is Professor Lionel Carmona. And did you have him for a class?
Yes, I did. He was my differential equations professor, and he definitely put me through hell in that class. That was one of the counter examples to what I just to actually what I just said. Professor Carmona definitely, he gave us a lot of problems to do, and he really, really challenged us in that class to think in ways that we had never thought before. And that class still holds a special place in my heart.
I think you said it was your first math class at the college.
Yes, it was.
Okay,
yeah, it was.
Yeah. So what do you think you're going to do with your degree from the University of Connecticut when you're finished? Are you going to continue your studies, or what do you see yourself?
So my ultimate goal is to become, actually a community college professor. I would say that Middlesex has such an impact on me that I could see myself even teaching there, in years to come when I get the necessary credentials to do so. But I think before I go on to grad school right away, I do want to work in the private sector and get maybe some more applied math experience and whatnot, because I feel like I've become comfortable within academia, and which is fine. I love academia, but I want to be challenged, and I want to be made uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. That's a nice way to put it. Yeah, in some ways, education should make you a little bit uncomfortable in whatever field you're choosing, to kind of challenge what your notions are, or challenge what you think you already know about that topic.
Yeah. And especially, I want to see, like, I've had some success being a private tutor as well. And since I graduated from Middlesex, I've become a fully private tutor since I'm no longer working in their tutoring center. But I feel like, once I graduate, I can put more time and maybe potentially grow my tutoring business into something a little more sustainable than just a couple of students per week. So that is another goal of mine, is to develop my tutoring business into something that's more profitable and more sustainable and on a larger scale. Because right now it's really informal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think we should tell our listeners, Josh, that if it's okay with you for me sharing this, is that Josh graduated from Middlesex Community College in 2019 with a 3.97 GPA, so one of our top scholars.
Yeah, I was so close to a 4.0, but the Professor Busa's Physics 2 class, that final exam on electricity and magnetism, really just sucker punched me right in the face.
So
I was so close.
You got that 1 A minus in there.
Yes,
right?
I did. I got that 1 A minus. Yeah.
Okay. And so, Josh, we were talking about how this year kind of interrupted everything. We all got sent home thanks to the COVID pandemic, which is still an issue around the world today. And all of us have been working and studying from home. But what kind of hobbies have kept you busy in some of your spare time? I can see a guitar behind you.
Yeah, I've been an on and off guitar player basically my whole life. I started as a kid. My parents enrolled me in classical guitar lessons, and then eventually, when I got to middle school, I finally convinced them to let me try electric guitar. And I've been playing progressive rock and metal ever since. I fell in love with the genre throughout high school, and for the last heck, 10 years, I've been playing that and trying to develop my skills.
Awesome. And do you kind of play on your own or play along with music on your computer, or do you play with other people?
I will, yeah. So generally I play on my own. I will, learn songs and then play along with them,
Mm-hmm.
being blasted through my speakers. And which has actually given me a pretty good sense of rhythm. I have been complimented on that before, which I had never thought I would have had, because I haven't actually, I have limited experience playing with other musicians, but playing in time with the band through the speakers does actually help. But yeah, so I just trying to learn songs that challenge my techniques and whatnot, and try to perfect them.
That's cool. A couple things I've read, there's some people who say that we use the same parts of our brain for music as well as mathematics. And I don't know if any thoughts related to that at all?
Well, I've always been pretty good at memorizing as a kid. I still to this day, I can recite the alphabet backwards. I can recite all U.S. presidents forwards and backwards. I can tell you all the state capitals. I think at one point I had all the flags of the world memorized.
Whoa.
And so it helps with being able to memorize songs and memorize patterns, both with fret numbers, note names, finger patterns, and which is then, of course, a very transferable skill to mathematics, right? There's been an initiative within education recently to push a more conceptual understanding without sort of the memorization background that we subject kids to. But I think that being good at memorizing that stuff is very helpful, because it allows it to sit in your brain and
Mm-hmm.
you sort of develop the theory behind it subconsciously.
Okay.
So I place a lot of I put a lot of pride in memorizing as a part of learning.
Sure. Well, I think memorizing and also identifying patterns, whether that's in
Yes,
math or
definitely.
in music
Absolutely.
or in just, what we see in the world around us. Yeah. You think about in music, like you were talking about having your hand move up and down the fretboard of a guitar. You don't have to memorize every single piece of music if you remember the most common chord changes,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yeah, pattern recognition is absolutely huge, and it really helps when you actively try to connect, as you're learning higher and higher level mathematics, trying to connect it with not just what you've learned before, but also different fields of mathematics that you've learned before. I was this summer I delved into the lesser used parts of my linear algebra textbook, and I found some connection to something that I had learned in my partial differential equations class
Mm-hmm.
at UConn, and I was blown away when I saw that. It was really, really cool to see. So just actively trying to form those connections and patterns really has a really powerful effect to make things stick within my mind and within people's minds, because I think people should try to do that more often.
Sure. So it sounds like really you've got sort of just this natural ability to kind of connect all these big concepts and explain them to people and have them make some connections. So I think getting into education sounds like it's a real natural winner for you.
I would agree with that, but funny enough, I didn't start out with that ability. I would say that I had a desire to become a tutor, but then that ability I didn't see it come to fruition until I actually started tutoring, because many times, the one of the more infamous math classes at Middlesex is college algebra,
Mm-hmm.
because students are required to take it to graduate from the university, but not everybody's a math-minded person, and of course, it brings back traumatizing memories from middle school and high school and whatnot. So it's definitely not an easy class to pass if you're not a math person. And so I spent a lot of time tutoring that within the tutoring center, and even explaining these relatively simple concepts over and over again, I was still able to find new connections and new meaning within them each time I explain them. Right? I can vividly remember explaining a concept to a student and then just sort of pausing, going, "Oh, I never realized that before," and the student will look at me like I'm crazy, and I'm just like, "Sorry, I just connected with something that I had learned recently. So sorry. Anyway, back to the lesson.
Right. Interesting. So obviously, math is a big interest of yours? Music? What other hobbies do you have? What else? How else have you been spending your time at
I
home?
really enjoy studying chess. I find it along the same lines as
Yep.
music and math. A lot of pattern recognition and whatnot. I love cooking. I've been following Gordon Ramsay's recipes
Hmm.
religiously, and I enjoy watching his YouTube content as well. And I of course study math within my free time, and I've always loved playing video games too.
So, what kind of video games are you into?
Right now, I mean, I've always loved Call of Duty ever since
Hmm.
middle school. But more specifically, I love strategy games, especially the Total War series of games. There's a total conversion for it. There's a mod for it that turns it all into Lord of the Rings, and I love Lord of the Rings, so that I could play that game for hours. Um, but um, but yeah, strategy games, and the other big one that my friends and I play a lot is League of Legends, which is a huge MOBA style game.
Okay, awesome. And as somebody from a different generation, like you're talking a foreign language to me at this point.
Yeah.
So, but if you can think back maybe on one experience in your schooling, whether it was at Middlesex, UConn, or even in K to 12 education, if you can think back on one experience where a teacher truly kind of helped you in a real positive way, touched you in a positive way, do you have a strong memory like that?
Hmm. I would say in high school when my freshman history teacher recommended me for AP World History.
Okay.
Yeah, at the time I loved history. I still do love history, but at the time, history was my main
Mm-hmm.
area of study, and it felt really good to be excelling in his current class and then be recommended for an AP class as a sophomore, which has become more common now. But I would say it was sort of it wasn't super common. 10 like what yeah
Right.
8 or 9 years ago
Right. Right.
when I was in high school.
Well, and it kind of connects to something you said earlier about what you really appreciate in some of the teachers that you've had is that they can see an interest in, that you have and
Mhm.
want to kind of generate more. They want to make sure that you are showing that interest and that you're going to work hard toward that and not just like,
Yeah,
again, spoon feed it to you. So
yeah.
this is somebody who definitely saw this as something you were passionate about.
Yeah. And I would say another time that actually happened. I just thought of this too. My professor at UConn who taught transition to advanced math, which is basically where they teach you how to write proofs, and it's the prereq class for all the junior and senior level pure math classes. And I had some very good grades in his class. I had some very bad grades in his class. And he was a very he he was a very difficult professor, but at the end of the semester, when I was expressing doubts that I was really ready for higher level math given my performance on one of his tests that semester, he explained to me like where I was within the class, and what he had and the good work that he had seen me do. And it changed not only my perspective of him, because I had seen him as kind of as a complete hard ass before that, but now it him giving me that encouragement. It was really surprising. It was really surprising to see, and it really kind of changed my whole outlook, because it
Hmm.
was my first semester at UConn. Still wasn't sure if I was really ready to be there, and that really gave me the confidence going forward. And now, like when I'm at UConn, I don't feel any different than I was, at the height of my time during Middlesex and whatnot. So it really spun me around back into my comfort zone.
That sounds pretty cool. So we only have a little bit of time left. So one final question, and hopefully this is putting you on the spot a little bit too. So you've talked a little bit about how maybe someday you might be a college professor, which sounds like that would be a great career choice for you.
Thank you.
So imagine yourself sometime down the road, you're a successful professor at a college, and imagine you could tell yourself today, going back to the 24-year-old Josh, to say, here's what I've learned in my lifetime.
Oof. I'm a successful college professor, and I have to tell my 24-year-old self what I've learned in my lifetime. I oh, that's so difficult. Probably just that you should trust yourself a little bit more, because I definitely I come off as very confident, but I'm still very unsure within myself. And I doubt myself internally more than it necessarily comes off as, and it can definitely sort of spiral into, feeling anxious and, feeling like imposter syndrome and whatnot. But usually it goes away when I get, a good grade on assignment X or whatever. But but I need to be a bit more definitive with my thought patterns, I would say.
Okay. Well, I wasn't sure where you were going to take that, so that was a pretty introspective answer. Thank you very much for that. Well, I have no doubt that you will be successful in whatever you choose to do, Josh, and I want to thank you for spending some time with me this afternoon for Middlesex Moments.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I think we also want to thank all of our listeners for joining us for another edition of Middlesex Moments. Right now, the campus is closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, but we hope to reopen our main campus in Middletown by the end of the summer. And we're located at 100 Training Hill Road, up the hill in Middletown. And we also expect to have some classes at our Meriden Center at Platt High School again this fall. Certainly, you can visit us anytime, 24/7, at mxcc.edu, where you can make an appointment to have a virtual advising session or register for class or pay for class and become a Middlesex student and become a graduate, just like Josh Greenberg was in the year 2019 and now successfully at UConn. So on behalf of everybody here at Middlesex Community College, I'm Steve Minkler. Please be safe and be well.